Hey everybody, so Johan, the studio manager at Paradox Tinto, the team behind Europa Universalis 5, has put out 3 different articles this week. They generally go over the feedback they've received in the last 2 months and how that will affect their upcoming 2 months. And if you've clicked on this video, then you know that I'm going to be focusing on the 1.1 roadmap for the 1.1 Prospect update, because I think that's the most entertaining, the most interesting, and generally what will probably make the best video. I make these videos because people find I make the content very easy to understand and digestible, so you can understand where EU5 will be going in the next couple of months. I also like giving my opinion on this stuff and why it is a good and a bad idea, and I like taking my sweet time with it, as much time as I possibly can, because I like giving all my thoughts, because as many of you have suspected, I like hearing my own voice. Which is to say that this is still a blog. Like most of the stuff I do in EU5, other than the guides, it will be kind of like a blog, second monitor content, stuff to put on your TV, stuff to fall asleep to, stuff to listen to while you go to work. And I say that because it increases viewer retention when I kind of inform you guys what to expect. This will not be action-packed. I will not be editing in lots of stuff, so, you know, that's what you can expect. But, you know, that's how I like to do things. So as always, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and make sure to leave a comment down below. If it seems like I'm tired, I'm not tired. I've just been playing a lot of this indie game, Guthuk, The Desolation, and it is extraordinarily difficult, and it has been kicking my ass for about 8 hours before I finally peeled myself away from it to do this video. So in the upcoming 1.1 Prospect update, the developers have finally taken time to settle down maybe a little bit and consolidate their ideas into actually doing a larger patch. And this larger patch is having its contents detailed here. They do have a levy update video, or sorry, a levy update post that will be hopefully going live tomorrow, that I'll do a video dedicated to that, because the levy regular balance is something I'm very interested in. You guys know I've made videos on that. I've talked about that a lot on stream, and it is something that I have spent a lot of time learning, and I have a lot of opinions on it. I have a lot of opinions on everything. So without further ado, going more into this now, gameplay. The first thing they will be doing is adding new diplomatic actions to transfer one of your subjects to another country, ways to destroy defensive leagues, and transferring territory between 2 of your subjects. I obviously think that this is a very good thing, because if subjects and subject gameplay is here to stay, and subjects are no longer just land that is your land temporarily held by the AI before you annex it, but if subjects are going to be a major gameplay consideration, then they need to have significantly more options available to them. For example, yes, I want to be able to transfer land between my subjects. I want to make larger subjects. I want to be able to take other people's subjects or give other people my subjects in peace deals, because that would be nice, obviously. And yeah, I think we need to do away with the EU4 mentality that subjects are just your land temporarily held by the AI, because that's just not how they're doing things. Although they are a great way to expand, and they are a great way to be able to annex territory without using the actually really terrible integrate territory cabinet action. Annexation speeds will now depend on your diplomatic spending, and countries can now reject hegemony demands. Let's focus on the first one first here. So obviously, I think that this one is worded a bit ambiguously. Does this mean that the current annexation speeds will be max diplomatic spending, or will the current annexation speeds be the minimum annexation spending? I suspect it will probably be that you'll be able to annex significantly faster by paying for diplomatic spending, because I think a lot of complaints have been that it takes a very, 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 very long time to annex vassals. And the developers do want you to waste a lot of your money on the diplomatic spending, because that's, you know, obviously one of the gold sinks in the game that are currently being avoided pretty easily. So if they could encourage you to put your gold into diplomatic spending in order to get your vassals into you much quicker, then that would, you know, help the game in a lot of different ways. Now, this second one worries me a bit. Countries being able to reject hegemony demands. Pretty much in every single game where the developers start adding options to avoid penalties, to avoid the AI kind of infringing on their freedom. Every time they add those options, the players run away with them pretty much instantly and can totally and absolutely ignore these pressure points, as I might call them. To give you an example of a game that does not let you, like, it gives you the option to try to avoid the AI demanding things of you, but it's an option really only in theory, is Kenshi. If you guys have ever watched Kenshi or played Kenshi, you would know the Holy Nation. The Holy Nation is one of my best examples of a developer who lets you technically not have to obey the rules of the AI, but technically is carrying a lot of this. So the Holy Nation, Kenshi's kind of like an open world RPG type deal. Let's just imagine you have characters and you're moving through land, and that land belongs to the Holy Nation. The Holy Nation has certain demands. Women must be accompanied by men, no robots, no non-humans. They will beat the crap out of you, execute all the non-humans, turn off all the robots, take away all your prosthetics, enslave you, literally enslave you, and just generally make your life absolutely miserable if you do not follow their demands. They will go out of their way to invade your land to try to make you obey those demands. If you don't carry your Bible on you, they will beat the crap out of you. Now, the thing about the Holy Nation is technically you can get away with it. Technically, you can try to avoid their rules, but they are extraordinarily powerful. Now, this goes into EU5. Let's bring this back for a second, because if France is telling you to embargo a nation and you're very small, and France has a giant fleet outside of your harbor, I do not think it should be very easy for you at all to say, no, I don't want to embargo them. This should either give you outrageous penalties to the point that you basically cannot avoid them. Like, it basically just destroys your country. Maybe France embargoes you with everybody else, right? Or alternatively, maybe it just gives France an outright casus belli on you, where they can just obliterate you, and it just is not good. Basically, what I'm hoping here is this doesn't just turn into another, the players were annoyed by this thing, so we turned it off, because obviously you are going to be annoyed. That's the whole point, is to be annoyed. There's a stronger nation, and they're telling you to do something, and can you say no to them? No, because they're stronger than you. Because you can't stop them from doing it. Can you get allies and try to prevent it? Sure, but you haven't done that yet, right? And maybe that's what the developers are going to try to add, is allowing you to get allies and allow you to try to, maintain your autonomy. But, for the most part, I would like to say that in 95 or more % of situations, the AI should be able to entirely enforce their will upon you. And that is a part of the game, and that is a part of history. And if we're trying to make a historical game, then no, small nations should not just be able to say no to France. They're France. And small nations should not be able to say no to Great Britain's navy. That's their whole shtick, right? So in summation, I'm just really hoping that the developers are not just turning off player annoyances, because that's a very slippery slope. The second you start giving in to your players, yes, sometimes you do need to listen to your players, but I've seen more than a couple games. Path of Exile 1 rings a bell, where when the developers give in to their players, all the pushback against the players keeps getting, toned down, until eventually, if the developers try to add any pushback at all at a certain point, like, the player base just throws temper tantrums. So, yeah. The code system for religion has been reworked, so you can now reform away from Doom. So for those of you guys who don't know, Nahua, that's the religion in the Aztec in Mexico. Nahua has Doom. Doom punishes you for expanding. Now this is supposed to be a reward type scenario where you play the Aztec, you get super punished in the early game by Doom, then you get punished by being invaded, but then you get rewarded if you aren't conquered and you stay Nahua and you reform the religion, that you get all these buffs. But unfortunately, you still keep Doom. And because you still keep Doom, that means you get punished for expanding, which means that you never actually get rewarded for playing the Aztec, which is probably not a very good system, as you can imagine. So by removing Doom from the Nahua, once you reform it all, and once you succeed in the little Aztec gameplay, then that just makes it all feel better, and that makes it more rewarding to actually go through that terrible, terrible early game. Although, you know me, like, I'm always a bit wary of systems that are like, eat a debuff early game and then get super, super strong, because you know, it really depends on, like, is this a big debuff? Is this something you can easily work around? Or is this a situation where it's going to be like, you know, I guess I have EU4 PTSD. I'm gonna call it that. All you guys have probably noticed that I have EU4 PTSD because I really, really hate where EU4 went at the end of it, with like modifier and modifier and modifier and modifier and modifier and modifier and modifier, like 20 billion modifiers. Like, oh man, you formed Prussia. That must have been really hard. Here, you now have Space Marine drop pods. Like, what the hell? Okay. Colonial charters will be reworked, so instead of going to a certain percentage of your dominant culture, religion, or pops, it now keeps track of how many pops you have sent, etc., so you can get minorities in your colonies. That's okay, I guess, but it's not really that big a deal in the long run. I think the bigger issue right now is colonies are like way too fast. I think a reasonable number for colonial setup would be maybe like 30% of the current speed would be a good starting point, and it would probably need to be even slower than that. Even the AI manages to get outrageously big colonies really, really fast. If you, the player, are trying to colonize, then you can colonize the entire New World before the mid 1500s, maybe, if you're really going for it. And so colonies are way, way, way too fast. If I was to talk about colonies and an issue that colonies have, that's the problem. Colonies getting minorities is fine, I guess. It's just not really that big a deal for me. Ability to provoke rebels to start an uprising now. Yeah, I mean, frankly, it is annoying. It's one of those things where it's like, it's pushback against the player, but it's such annoying pushback that it's just RNG of you sometimes just sitting there, just being like, well, I hope this rebellion procs so I can go do stuff. Although rebellions won't proc at war, it is kind of annoying that like sometimes you just can't. Like you're just sitting there and you're like, I want to deal with this rebellion before I go do some other stuff, and then you're just like, okay, it's just sitting right there. Like I mean, it's hard to describe because like it does tick up in EU5, but sometimes like it reaches a certain point and then it kind of goes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. It's just, it's annoying. I don't know how to describe it properly. An ability to change your culture's opinion of other cultures on your own. Yeah, that would be quite nice. That's just a quality of life issue that, yeah. Speaking of rebels, tiny revolts will no longer form a new country and start an entire world, but instead impact the location they would have spawned in when they reach 100%. I think that's probably a good idea. I do think rebellions don't need to always be open warfare. It can just be certain things like, man, these people are so unruly that trying to rule them is just not benefiting me. That's often what did happen historically. That's why some areas of some countries just got autonomy, because they were very unruly, and trying to directly rule them just was not benefiting you. So you set up a little puppet government, you let the people think that they had their government, but it's just a little puppet government, right? And that's, I think that's how you can kind of simulate that. Some areas of the world were just not really being ruled in any realistic manner, and were not really profiting the countries that own them. The game will allow certain countries to get bonuses or penalties to how they are impacted by proximity in certain topographies. Example, Austria gets some mountain hills plateaus bonuses. So obviously, and I mentioned Austria a lot, Austria is supposed to be a big player. They're not quite a tier 1 country, but they're like a tier 1.5 country. They're in between a tier 2 country and a tier 1 country. Tier 1 countries are things like France, Great Britain, Spain, Ottomans, etc. Austria doesn't have as much content as them, but it has more content than tier 2 countries for sure. And one of the problems is they are like catastrophically underpowered. Under AI control, they will never do anything ever. And even in multiplayer games, things like that, their neighbors are just so much stronger than them. Like, obviously, I don't think Austria should be stronger at game start than Bohemia and Hungary, but the gap right now is like insurmountable. In addition to that, Austria has a very serious problem where the best way to play Austria is to just play Bavaria. You don't try to own Styria, you don't try to push down there, you don't try to push into Italy. That would be a terrible idea. Instead, you just conquer into Bavaria and you play Bavaria. And, you know, basically any gameplay system that is encouraging like extremely ahistorical behavior should probably start being curbed so that countries can actually, like, basically being able to be being able to play a country historically should be encouraged. Being able to play a country as they historically did should always be strong. Maybe it shouldn't be as strong as like some ahistorical approaches, but definitely at the very least as a bare minimum, playing a country as it did historically should be viable. But right now there's simply no viable way to play historical Austria, because if you try to move your capital to Graz, as they did historically, it just doesn't work. It simply doesn't work, and it should at least be a gameplay option to try to play historically. And it would also mean that Austria could actually control their mountains, which means maybe Austria actually takes Tyrol, because right now, whether or not you get Tyrol as Austria, it like helps to get Tyrol, but we're talking like it only really helps once you move your capital over to the Bavaria, and then you have like Bavaria roads down to Tyrol, which seems odd, to say the least. Okay. We added coin laws that impact what metals you use for coins and get inflation from. And of course, Sweden can make copper coins, which absolutely will never be a bad idea. That's cool, I guess. My only concern is that this is like a very, 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 very niche type of situation where maybe you appease like a couple dozen people and you add all these new laws and you get all the text for them localized. Maybe get some localization wrong and annoy some people. Maybe there's just like an obvious best coin, and maybe there's just like an obvious worst coin, and maybe you just end up powering up the player and debuffing the AI. In certain situations like this, it's like, that's neat and all. Like, that's cool. It's definitely historical. It just occurs to me, like, is this really that important? As mentioned in the 22nd of December post, we're reworking rivals, fixing levies, merc regular balance, and much more. Now, hopefully, they detail that in its entirety, and I can go through all the math on that and kind of be like, okay, this is going to work, or this is not going to work. There's definitely some problems, and I have made some posts on it. Basically, I think the developers are way too committed to the idea that cavalry must be useless late game and infantry must be useless early game. I think both of them should be totally fine. You might say, well, it's not historical to play a Cav nation in the Napoleonic Wars. Sure, fine. But it doesn't make good gameplay. That's the problem. It makes very, very bad gameplay. The gameplay that you start with 30 cavalry in your armies and you only move to 30 infantry in age 6 is bad gameplay. There should always, in every single age, be a viable option to work with cavalry and an option to work with infantry. And ideally, you should never be able to use 100% cav or 100% infantry without incurring some sort of drawback to it. So, for example, if you decide I'm just only going to use cavalry, then your center flank should just be weak, and it should actually be a Achilles heel of your setup. If you decide to play 100% infantry, then yes, your flanks, your left and right flanks should be weaker, and that should be a point of weakness in your build, right? Ideally, you should have to use all of them, because that just makes sense to me, right? That makes sense to everybody. If you play Hungary and you have 20% cav combat, then that cav combat affects you for 99% of the game and only stops really affecting you in age 5, when infantry can actually start punching so hard that full cav armies aren't the best anymore. But even then, when you have 20% cav combat, you can still be running full or near full cav armies even into age 5 and be doing fine. So it's just, if we're gonna have infantry, cavalry, and cannons, then all three of them need to be viable. And yes, you can say historically cannons only got good in the late 1600s for blah 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 blah. Like, basically the problem is we only have 3 types of units. Maybe you could say we have 5 types of units once we factor in the initiative ones, but those ones don't have enough of a big difference in my opinion. And if we're going to build, like, basically, if we moved away from EU4 armies so that we could actually have our own armies, and that using our own armies was actually going to be meaningful, then we need to make that meaningful, and we need to make these actually matter for options. Like, yeah. We're also working on a complacency mechanic, reworking expeditions from being a purely script system to being a code system and adding in a slavery market distribution system. What is a complacency mechanic? That is not worded very well. Yeah, slavery market distribution system would be very nice. Content design. We will add a new disaster for Brandenburg and add a new unique advances in policies to some German countries. Yes, I would also. I made an entire video on this, so I'm just gonna give you like here's my thoughts on it. Basically, I think all German formables should have some advances to them, like some policies to them. Obviously, I think the way nations are done right now is pretty well done. Like you've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. So if you make a formable at tier 2, then Austria can't form it because Austria is a tier 2 nation. So you could make things like a decently strong Hanover, and if you made Hanover tier 2 and you made Saxony tier 2, then Saxony wouldn't be able to just sprint up and form Hanover to double up on their buffs. But if you made Hanover with some decent advancements, with some decent policies, government reforms, maybe even, then you could play maybe a nation like Lubeck and form Hanover and actually, have a little bit of fun like that and have it be a bit different than playing Saxony. Because right now, when you play within the Holy Roman Empire, you basically form Saxony, Prussia, or Bavaria, because those are the best ones. There's also Austria, but Austria owns Austria, so it's kind of hard to form Austria, right? Okay. A lot of focus on Japan and China mechanics have been done here, including Sengoku Jidai and Red Turban Rebellions. Manchuria is also getting a fair bit of improvements, and the Tengri religion has been getting some gods. It's neat and all. My only concern, once again, is that China's just not fun to play in. You start as Great One, and then you sit on Great One. I really 102% believe that the developers need to go ahistorical with this one, and they need to let you play as the successor states right from game start. I should be able to play Ming, or the Ming people, or whoever forms the Ming culture, whatever you want to call it, like whatever group of people, that I should be able to play as them at game start. If you say, well, historically, Great One, okay, but great. Does it make good gameplay? Does it make good gameplay to sit on one bored as hell? No, actually, it really doesn't. And not only is it really bad for single player for enjoying that, but it's bad for multiplayer because then it's really overpowered to play China. It's like outrageously overpowered, and you can only have one player on China, which just it's not good for either situation. Single player hates it, multiplayer hates it, so we need to make some improvements to it. In the Americas, we have reworked the area in Brazil and improved the resource and food setup for both Andes and Mesoamerican regions. For those of you who don't know, a lot of people have complained that the Andes region, the western area, the Inca area has definitely ran into some food problems, and it's definitely run into a lack of certain goods that basically disable you from being able to advance throughout the different ages or even play the game in a fun way. And so by changing some of these goods setup, it'll definitely make the game a lot more fun and probably a lot more enjoyable for people. The Holy Roman Empire has seen a fair amount of attention as well. My only concern about the Holy Roman Empire receiving a lot of attention is that I know a lot of people want the Holy Roman Empire to stay fragmented, but the issue is right now there's no advantage for it to be fragmented, and there's no advantage to trying to hold the Emperor. Holding Emperor is not very fun to begin with. Like, it's not really that interesting. In multiplayer, the Holy Roman Empire often it buffed up its member nations who could try to do something with that. In single player, the Holy Roman Empire had lots of counts who all had troops, so a coalition could actually try to push out invaders. In EU5, neither of that is true. Being in the Holy Roman Empire does not buff you, it only nerfs you. I don't think that's how it should be. You can say that historically, the people wanted to get blah, 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 blah. Like, that, again, the problem comes down to it's not good gameplay. If you're within the Holy Roman Empire, and you start small, and you start with 0 land push, then you suck, and you continue to suck forever. You continue to suck basically until France, Bohemia, Denmark, or England kills you. It's just not fun gameplay. The Holy Roman Empire should have some advantage to it. Like, people historically did not just sprint out of the empire. I mean, there was Italy, but you also have to consider that there were a lot of situations happening in Italy. There was a lot of stuff happening down there that made people feel that they were okay leaving the Holy Roman Empire. And if you remember, it did end up with lots of wars down there, and maybe it didn't work out so spectacularly for them when they became a battleground and owned by different European powers once they stopped having the protection. That's a whole argument, and people agree or disagree with that. That's whatever. But what I'm just saying is that there's a reason that historically nations stayed within the Holy Roman Empire and didn't just all sprint out of it as soon as they could. Whereas right now, the Holy Roman Empire is literally only a debuff. You take more aggressive antagonism to try to expand. You basically have no protection. You often need to pay money to an emperor who's totally useless. Even with your money, even with your stuff, he's just never going to be very strong. There's just no advantage to it. These small non-emperor nations cannot use the Holy Roman Empire to try to boost their, like in EU4, you can boost your build cost, you can boost your development cost, you could get some other buffs out of it, right? You had protection as a small nation, so you could try to build up in the early game. If you were the emperor, then you got all those boosts from being the emperor, so it kind of worked for both sides. You know, being in the Holy Roman Empire as emperor or as a member nation, both things worked, right? But in EU5, both of them suck. And yeah. We're also working with improvements to other situations like Western Schism and Council of Trent. So I have played through the Council of Trent in single player and multiplayer. I keep bringing up multiplayer because multiplayer is like a good, like basically the way I like to put it, like obviously in single player some of these things don't work, but I often think to myself like, okay, but could this work in multiplayer? Even in multiplayer, the Council of Trent doesn't really work. The options are really weak. Staying Catholic just sucks, and frankly it's pathetic. It goes away so quickly. If you actually look at the VOD, if you just happen to catch my stream and wait to the Council of Trent, my exact thought was, wait, it ended? That's it? Yep, that was it. That was a great Catholic attempt to try to reform the religion to keep it from splitting. It basically did nothing. There was almost no benefits, and everyone was still like, yeah, okay, we're just all going Protestant. Catholic is just so weak right now, it's insane. As for Western Schism, I just don't believe there's enough options for people to really participate in it. It basically just amounts to France gets money. That's it. That's what Western Schism does. France gets money. It's not interesting. It doesn't bring any gameplay to the table. It doesn't bring anything to the table. Not only should it not just be France gets money, but it should maybe have like way more implications. It should maybe have way more like overreaching effects on the game. And it definitely, I think countries should be able to participate in it way more. Like, I think one of the issues with a lot of situations, the Guelphs and Ghibellines, for example, one of the issues is the most impact that thing has is that you use it to get Cassius Belli and your neighbors to conquer them. That's about it. That's about the most you impact with it. So, for example, Milan stayed within the Holy Roman Empire and worked with the emperor because the emperor gave them a lot of benefits. They allowed them to become a monarchy. They allowed them to become, I think, was it a dukedom? I think they allowed them to get a duke title or something like that. They gave them, basically, Milan got benefits and they got a reason to actually stay within the Holy Roman Empire and actually push to keep people in the Holy Roman Empire because it was their guy. Their guy was backing them up. So they said, hey, we should work with the guy who's helping me. But in game, none of that happens, and there's really no interesting gameplay. There's just nothing happening. That's my problem with some of these situations, is that they're very historical, and like they kind of like, ooh, wow, you know, you read the information, and you're like, ooh, I didn't know that. But then once you come down to actually interacting with it, you realize that, oh, I can't do anything. There's nothing here. We've added an Army Navy template builder just like EU4 has, and also added in a nicer end of war dialogue showing losses like EU4. I really would like that too. If it is at all possible, I would also like to see, because I do know in game you guys store the casualties in battles and the casualties in wars. I hypothetically would like to be able to load into old wars. I'd like to be able to like click on my old wars, and I'd like to be able to click and even see battles in those old wars, right? I'd like to be able to see just how badly I won or lost against the French, or I won or lost against the Bohemians. I like to see the casualties of battles, because I know that information, you know, is in game. I don't know if it gets deleted after the war is over, but you know, it could be something hypothetically that could be cool. It might be too much information saved. It might increase the size of saves a bit too much, but if it is already being stored, and it is already in there, just not accessible, then it would be nice to be able to access it. We've also added rally points for raising levies. Yes, levies are quite frustrating and dumb right now. And recruiting mercenaries have quite a lot less clicking for the average player. Well, I mean, what I would frankly like to see, I should be able to just do EU4 style mercenaries, and I think that would be ideal. I should be able to open the mercenary panel, click mercenary, click location, boom, done. Less clicking, even half the clicking is probably too much clicking. Having to open the mercenary panel, then you scroll by size of their mercenaries, then you have to click on each one of them to see how many mercenaries you can actually hire. Is it 26? Is it 22? Is it 18? You got to click through a few of them, then you see one, ooh, okay, I can hire 24 mercenaries from this guy. Then you have to scroll all the sliders down to 0 on the early useless units. Then you slide up the cavalry at the highest age. Then you notice that it's some backwards country that has no technology, and you go, oh, dang it. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's just too much clicking. It's too much frustration. I would very much like to see it just revamped entirely. The current system was like idealistic, I would say, but I mean, my personal opinion is let's just go back to EU4 style mercenaries. Let's add some manpower to mercenaries as well. The ideal way to use mercenaries is to fight a battle, consolidate them, fight a battle, consolidate them, and then they basically only have like one dude left, and then you don't even pay any maintenance on them because they're left with like one mercenary. You could remove consolidation, and then they just stay all dead, and then that's stupid too. So I think we just go with mercs have their own manpower pool. Now you could say, arguably, that mercenaries then could kill units too much when people weren't, basically mercenaries could kill people's population too much. I don't know if mercenaries actually kill your population. I'd have to actually see some testing on that one. I don't really know. All I know is it's just a very frustrating system right now. There are now more settings when it comes to music, and we've added in a music player so you can control which songs you want to listen to. Neat. Alerts can be permanently disabled now, and you can restore them from a special UI if needed. The game will no longer reset filters to what the game thinks is best when opening a screen again, but you can now pin which filters you want in each screen. Yeah, that would be very nice as well. There's some alerts which just are not impactful. They're not very good. Like, I know calling me stupid because my ruler is stupid is funny, and it is funny, frankly. I mean, honestly, it's always funny when it's like, hey man, your ruler sucks, but at the same time it's like, okay, like, let me turn this off and let me actually make sure that if a new notification pops up at the top of my screen, that it actually is something that is important and matters to me so that I can pay attention to it. Because otherwise, the top of your screen has 20, 30 notifications and a new one pops up and you're just like, I don't care. You just don't pay attention to it at all because it's just too many and it's just totally useless at that point, right? We've added more abilities to manage the formation of a unit and have a toggle for units to always auto balance for those who want it that way. Obviously, I would very much like to just be able to pick where I want my units by default. So infantry middle, cavalry left, cavalry right, stuff like that. Because that's just, I mean, to be real, I mean, infantry should just by default go in the middle. Cavalry should by default just go into the side. There's no real reason not to. There's no advantage. I mean, this isn't like Imperator where you could kind of try to be sneaky beaky like and put heavy cavalry in the middle because you know that your opponent will try to put horse archers in the middle to counter your heavy cavalry in the middle. So then they put their heavy cavalry on the side to counter light cavalry on the side. Like there's nothing like that, right? Heavy infantry do better in the middle, period. They just do. You put them on the side, they'll do worse. They'll get slaughtered. So you put infantry in the middle. You put heavy cavalry on the side. I think I said that right. But basically, you get the idea, right? Like, there's no advantage to playing wrong. So by default, you should just have it play correctly. And I should also then, as a player, be able to manage it. Go into my formation, just click, yes, put heavy infantry middle. Yes, put heavy cavalry side. Yes, this is just how I want it to be. And maybe if I'm playing a nation like Hungary, I can decide I want heavy cavalry on all flanks. Or maybe I can decide I want all my light cavalry on the left and then heavy cavalry in the middle and right. You know what I mean? Like, basically, I just want to be able to make it just be like, just balance this army. I will give you units. I'll consolidate the units into the army. Just keep the army like this. This is how I want it because this is just how the best way to play it is going to be. I'm sorry, that's a bit ranty, isn't it? The unit UI will no longer obscure half the screen for multiple units, okay? And you can have a condensed version of the UI as well. We also have lots and lots of smaller quality of life things for the UI. That would be very nice. There's not much information to go there, but the better UI would also be very nice. We have mentioned the new river map mode, but we have also improved the road map modes and added several other new map modes like coalition, maximum control, and many more. I mean, the coalition is basically the antagonism map mode, so it's not that much of an improvement. There does come a certain point where if you add too many map modes, it's detracting, because then trying to like find actually useful map modes becomes more difficult. Maximum control, like basically if you had a map mode that just listed, here's how much control you're missing. I think that would be the best way to put it. How much control are you missing? And then you just open up a map mode and it says over here, -20, over here, -30, over here, -2. And then I can just be like, oh, I need to use my increased control edict on this one. Not edict, cabinet action, because I need to increase control there. And I think, you know, that would be the most useful map mode for me if I could just click that every like decade or so and just be like, oh shoot, why is that province just weirdly below where it should be? Okay. All right, we have added new loading screen for 1.1. Neat. Okay, not to mention many new icons for new advances and modifiers and more. I mean, obviously, I'll have to see where this is before I can really comment on it. I don't really know. Like, is this going to be a big deal, small deal? Are we adding lots of icons? Is the UI going to be significantly better or just a little bit better? I don't know. But at any rate, I mean, obviously the most impactful things are probably in the gameplay. The new diplomatic actions for your subjects will probably matter. Being able to reject hegemony demands will probably matter. Annexation speeds being affected by diplomatic spending, I'm very interested to see where that will go. Certain nations being buffed, like Austria, will of course very much matter. The mercenary merc regular balance will very, 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 very much matter. So I really want to see on that one. Whatever a complacency mechanic is, I'm sure I may be overlooking something that's like really obvious, but I can't think of it for the life of me right now. Updates to Brandenburgs, more content updates for Germany, being able to start a new run as a German country, and just, I mean, even advances can be cool, right? Like for the longest time, all some nations had was unique national ideas. I would just play a nation because I had new national ideas. It's a bit archaic at this point, sure, but I mean, it's something to work on, right? Attention to Holy Roman Empire, we don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. You don't know what that is. Improvements to situations is always nice. Builder, you know, UI updates. I can't tell you what the UI updates are actually going to do because I haven't played with them. So hopefully they're impactful. We'll never know. Okay, so that was the upcoming 1.1 Rasback update. If you made it this far, this is a bit shorter than I thought it was going to be. But actually, no, this is probably about where I thought it was going to be. I didn't think I'd get over an hour on this one. So yeah, being about 40 minutes seems about right. So that's it. Nothing more to say then. Give me your thoughts on anything I said here. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and leave your comments down below. Thank you everybody for watching. And as always, I hope all of you have a great rest of your day.